Welcome to the crypto trading channel. My name is Stu. Guys, Bitcoin still obviously has a lot of work to do to prove itself bullish, and I've still got a couple shorts running. However, there are a few reasons why I opened a long position today as well. So I wanted to quickly go over where my invalidations are, what my thought process is in general, a couple of things that recently caught my attention, and basically what I'm looking for going forward and so on. So with that, guys, I want to quickly zoom out and look at the weekly chart here. You guys know in yesterday's stream I was talking about this, that the chart prime 3D trend indicator here, just how in previous cycles, I mean, this thing is basically just a monster indicator in trending markets, especially on the longer time frames like a weekly like this. But generally every time it's flipped orange here, we have seen full on bear markets. And that's basically what we had here. We even got the retest just like, a couple cycles ago here. We went further up into it, but very much so like last cycle, we basically went up and retested it and just seen a rejection there. So that is quite nasty. And also, like I was talking about, the fact that even with this consolidation that we had, we ended up just dropping below those lows. So as far as especially the macro trend here, guys, we've broken so many nasty structure levels at this point that the bull trend had just been absolutely destroyed, right? But I mean, I've been quite vocal about that since basically October, November. But yeah, so basically we have nasty structure. And you guys know I've been kind of aiming for this STUBER fib setup, which would be down around 40K. I've more specifically called for it in the early October, basically. And I think the only way that that would happen is basically if we get some sort of rally at some point, followed by a further plunge to the downside and then setting a new low. Like I said, closer to October. But as it stands right now, there's a couple things that just kind of caught my attention on the weekly here, you guys. Mainly, actually, first, I want to go over the Prime Oscillators Pro indicator here. This indicator does have these signals here that will tell us if things are overbought or oversold. Now, notice that we actually had the oversold icons, the oversold signals coming into play at this level. And after some short consolidation, we basically it was a consolidation before a continuation, not a reversal, right? So absolutely plunging through that. And that's where I kind of have concerns, you guys, is the fact that even though we were oversold, we did not get that bullish reversal either way. So that's just a bit of a warning to me at this point. And I also want to bring up the RSI. Now, this one I have mixed feelings about, quite honestly. One thing to consider is, generally speaking, when the RSI goes into oversold territory on the weekly time frame, it generally is a bottom. I will totally give it that. However, often more specifically in the last couple of cycles and on the shorter time frames, is more so if you go into oversold territory, like I said, more so on the shorter time frames. But when you go into oversold territory in a downtrend, that's actually just showing that you have a shit ton of selling pressure, a lot of bearish strength, right? So if this cycle plays out very similar to previous cycles, then yeah, I would say it's great that the RSI is so low at this point, down to about 28, so below that 30 level oversold territory. So like I said, I honestly have mixed feelings about this. I really do think it could go either way. But even with saying that, I think that we are near a bottom, right? I'm not saying that we necessarily have bottomed yet. We haven't hit this STUBER fib pocket yet. But if we were to end up just absolutely nuking down to the downside for maybe another week or two and tag some of these support fibs with the RSI being oversold, guys, I think that's literally the best thing that Bitcoin could do right now. I would actually be way, way more bullish if we end up coming down to 40K rather than if we just end up bouncing around and chopping around sideways at this point. I would really love to see that just finish the move, come down to a proper support level, and then carry on from there. But guys, if this is something that interests you, you just want to see more examples of how I do look at market structure in general like this, and you want to see some examples of some of my trade setups, strategies, warnings, and so on, be sure to scan the QR code to gain access to my Telegram, which now, due to our exclusive partnership with Prime Automation, will also grant you free, unlimited algo bot trading as well. And as I mentioned yesterday, to top it all off, Blowfin is also celebrating this partnership by giving this special promotion for new signups under us at the crypto trading channel. So if this amazing free deal interests you, be sure to scan the QR code and get into my Telegram. Like I said, guys, just kind of talking about market structure and how I'm viewing the market in general and calling out this guy. Like I said, I still am in a bit of my short position. I only have about 5% of it running still, and it's not this high anymore since we've seen a bit of a bounce. But that's the last place I took profits at 744%. And guys, that setup was shared live in the Telegram. So absolutely beautiful call there. But yeah, like I said, kind of mixed signals on the weekly with that RSI, whether we are oversold or we just have a shit ton of strength to the downside. Generally speaking, in bull markets, when we are overbought and people start saying that we're overbought and that means we have to reverse, quite often, at least to the bullish side, or rather the overbought side, it's actually quite bullish. That is generally where we get our most parabolic moves in the market cycles. Just like back here, just like, I mean, this one, we went into it so many times and just continued just absolutely mooning, right? So if that is going to be how the bearish side ends up working this cycle, which again, so far that has not really been a case or the case in previous market cycles. It's just something that I want to at least give credit to, that, you know, we could see, even if we are near a bottom, we could see that nasty, nasty capitulation into some actual macro support. But like I said, that doesn't mean I'm bearish. That means that, yeah, I would love it if my shorts end up running down there. Sure, absolutely, that would be fantastic. But it's more the excitement of the volatility in general, and then looking for the bullish outcome from that, right? When we can actually start claiming that the market has bottomed, when if we end up testing macro support and starting to flip the midterm trend on the 4 hour, for example, that would be fantastic. But as far as the 4 hour goes, speaking of that, you guys, yesterday I mapped out some of my support levels, some of my resistance levels. And to me, it really looks like this wants to roll over to the downside. Now, I will zoom into the shorter time frames in a sec, talk about that long position and why we may not roll over. Just something to consider, and it doesn't necessarily mean it would be bearish for the trend, right? But I would not be surprised to end up seeing us retest support. That would actually make me feel much better. I don't like having untested support levels, basically. So after getting some sort of a rally, I would really like to come back and test some of these support levels. Into the purple pocket for a higher low. That would be ideal, a perfect Stuber fib setup, right? If I pull a fib, something like this. So I would love to see a higher low in that pocket. But even if we end up coming and just seeing a bit of a fake out in a bullish swing fail kind of a territory, that would also be just fantastic to me. However, like I said, it does kind of look like it's rolling over, and I would love for it to do that. But if we zoom in, you guys, this is a setup I actually mentioned in yesterday's stream. The fact, this white line here, this is where I was talking about the fact that we had this low, we had a lower low, and we ended up breaking that lower high. So if we ended up pulling back, there was a potential Stuber fib. Now look, once again, showing how beautiful that 115 invalidation is. So basically ended up hitting all my entries on the way down, right? Because we got so close to the, well, basically testing the 115 perfectly. We hit all my entries. Average entry on that long is $68,438 US. I have already locked in a quarter of this, you guys. And the reasoning is just because a typical Stuber fib has played out, right? The fact that we came down, we ended up hitting all 4 of my entries. And then from there, we did hit the 0.5 fib, right? I actually front run it a little bit, as I always do, but we ended up hitting my first target. So I did take a quarter of my position off the table. I'm not updating my stop loss until we end up hitting my second target, which is currently at $70,333. There's still a possibility I take a small loss on this position, but this is a calculated risk at this point because, for one, As far as risk management goes, guys, as I had just said, I took profit on quarter of my position at my first target, right? So not only does that pay me a little bit of profits, but it also makes my position smaller now if I'm going to get stopped out. And if I get stopped out on that smaller position, I also have those profits that will act as a bit of a cushion. So my loss would actually end up at this point. I would still take a bit of a loss, but it would be about a quarter of the size of a loss as the original position had I just decided that I wanted to ignore my targets and just let it run. And then down here, I start to panic. I don't know what I should do. Should I just take my minimal profits? Should I close my position? What should I do? Right at this point, it's very easy to keep a level head because the loss is going to be so small at that point if it happens that I'm just not too worried about it. And that also means that both of my short positions are still running to the downside. So I'm more so taking this as a bit of a hedge just because it was like I said in yesterday's stream, it's just a valid STUBER fib setup and it never did get invalidated because we never broke the 115. I did mention yesterday, however, guys, one reason why I think this setup is a little bit risky and why I factored that in with my risk management and my position sizing is because I thought that, there's a good chance that we're actually in a bigger STUBER fib, right? The fact that we have this structure here, and you'll see it on the 4 hour as well, but this is actually a more proper one because this is our high. This is our higher high. This is our confirmed higher low. So if we pull a fib from the lowest point between the two, that gives us a range something like this. Well, I shouldn't say something like this. This is how my range ends up being. So notice that even if that smaller one that I was looking for, the one that I'm currently in, a bit of a scalp, hoping it turns into a runner, I suppose. But notice that there is a potentially bigger range here at play. So we could still end up dropping just below this and still finding support in here, basically. I think that either way, this is still a very nice setup. And, just looking at it right now, we came down, we hit the 786. We even came down and hit the 886 absolutely perfectly. And to be fair, we have, just like the setup that I was talking about, we have hit that first target already. So at this point, it's kind of tough to say what's going to happen. But so far, I mean, support is support until it's broken. We still have that higher high, confirmed higher low. If we end up basically invalidating this, that's where I would start looking for a bigger move down to that 4 hour support that I was talking about, right? If we end up losing this range that we are currently in, then I would basically say, okay, where did this swing begin? It began from here. And that would be my fib pull, right? Just like the one on the 4 hour for these boxes down here. So that's kind of where that comes from. So yeah, at this point, I mean, as far as this structure is on the 5 minute, I'm still favoring the bullish side just because we have a higher high, confirmed higher low. Until that changes, if we end up losing that level, like I said, I think it's quite reasonable to expect us to end up dropping all the way back down to like 62.5K, maybe even all the way down towards 58K, right? That would be fair game. It would not even invalidate this as a nice bottom. As far as support, that could be a nice swing fail, reclaim this level and absolutely blast off from there. It's absolutely a possibility, you guys. And that doesn't mean that it has to happen. It's just that I like to talk about these things because as traders, we should be planning ahead, right? We don't necessarily know what's going to happen in the market, but we know how we want to react if certain criteria is met, right? We have our specific trade setups that we like to look for. And if they come to fruition, that's when we can execute our trades, right? It's trading is not all about just predicting correctly. It's about how you play those predictions when they show up, right? So at this point, still happy to hold this bit of a long from here and see what happens. Happy to have that hedge. And if we, like I said, if we end up invalidating that, breaking through this support here, then I'm just hoping to ride my shorts. The one from 89.9K, I'm hoping that it just continues nuking. It's just a beautiful trophy position at this point. But also this position, I would be looking at taking probably all of my profits if we end up hitting back down to these support levels. So that's kind of what I'm looking at there. As far as the bots with the strategies, no, there is not a STUBER bot out there, at least at this time. I would love it if there is. But yeah, that's a different company. I'm just partnered with them. Dan Rab, good to see you. Leo Fire Dog, good to see you here once again, my friends. The profit for profit. Yeah, Stuber fibs be stubin. Stubers be stubin. Taking a look at Solana, guys. This is actually another one that I laid out in yesterday's stream, right? I pulled this fib. And basically we ended up getting rejected right around that 786. I can't remember where we were. I know it had already started the move. I think we were down here or something in yesterday's stream, maybe even lower. I can't remember, but you can see that we obviously got the full move right back down to the bottom of that range, hitting the 0.5 fib, the 214 fib, and obviously the full range move. But something that's interesting with this right now, this is catching my eye a little bit right now, is there could be a beautiful falling wedge type of, or broadening wedge. What would we have here? Something like so. It's very possible that Solana has a very large range, something like that, which could be forming. And if we zoom in on the 5 minute, what do we have here for structure? We are basically just testing our lower high resistance, basically, right? Because if we look at structure for what it is here, we had a low, we had a lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. And that's basically where we're testing right now. So based on that bigger range, I think there's a good chance we could break it. However, in a downtrend, we need to respect resistance for what it is until it gets broken. But if it got broken, maybe we could see that sort of a Stuber retest, something like that. Potential setup to watch for that. Look how my eyeball is just drawn towards that 886. But yeah, something to watch for there on Solana. Hype as well, you guys. This is an interesting one because Hype did have this big move recently after it broke some very serious structure. You guys know that I have been talking about this one a little bit. And as far as looking for a swing position with lower leverage, because I do have my doubts about this right now. I'm actually not taking a long on this right now. It's kind of all I can do to bring myself to long Bitcoin at this point. However, looking at Hype right now, at least it does have this valid structure and we are retesting support, right? We have this high, we have a higher high, and we have this would be our confirmed higher low. So pulling a fib the way I did, we are currently testing the 886 pretty much perfectly right now. One thing to consider is if this guy gets invalidated and we break below that 115, we do have this bigger fib, right? So this would be more so the safer one that I'd be looking for, or just for a better entry anyways. But yeah, both possible scenarios. Basically, at least Hype does have some structure supporting it. But for those who like trading the 4 hour, at least there is a valid setup there. If this uptrend is going to continue, it at least has structure favoring that, right? I would not be shorting Hype right now. Let's put it that way. Even though I think it's absolutely possible we come and retest this support down here, there is no way that I would be shorting into this support with this type of structure here. Yeah, sounds like we basically feel the same about Hype there. What is the long short ratio looking like? It's kind of trying to flatline a little bit. I don't know. I still think that there's a good chance these end up coming and touching near the middle, kissing, touching tips, whatever. If that happens, that would obviously mean that retail would be building shorts. So if retail starts shorting heavily, then I think it's very possible that we go up and test, the higher low on the trend in this case. On the daily, that's actually up around 79K. On the 4-hour, it's, well, just a little lower at about 77K. Can I look at gun? Is that what the ticker is? And is it this one? Oh, there was a beautiful. Yeah, the thing with that is obviously it's hit the first target. It's back at the middle of the range at this point. But yeah, it absolutely found support where I would have liked to see it. There's a bit interesting. Something to watch for on this one. And I know the market structure looks just like how I just had that fib pulled. This is micro analyzing. It may be nothing, but it is something worth considering, is the fact that we actually had a higher high here and another higher high, right? Because we got that little pullback and then we went higher, which means that we actually had a higher low right there and we have lost that. Again, that may be micro analyzing too much. I haven't traded this coin myself. I've never looked at it before. I don't know if that's a typical thing. Here you can see it did something very similar and it didn't end up getting much of a bearish. Actually, I want to see that. You know what? It did have a STUBER that played out, right? It went up and it did not get invalidated before it ended up hitting the 0.5. And very close to the 214. So it did get a bit of a reaction on that kind of structure. So if the same thing was going to happen now, it'd basically be looking at something like this. So I don't know if that's going to matter. Just something to consider. If we end up getting back up to these resistance pockets, just be a little bit careful at that point. Again, respect resistance, especially when the market conditions are the way they have been. Just respect resistance when you get to it is the moral of the story. Good question. How do I select which bots to run? Honestly, I've just been kind of playing around with them for a few weeks. Just kind of looking at the charts, how they look. I actually just started another one right before starting the stream. You guys remember that when I was trading altcoins a little more, I was trading Aster quite a bit, and I see that this guy just actually launched today. So that's one that I threw a little at. And yeah, basically I look at these thumbnails, look how the consolidation looks, just kind of looking at the health of the trend, but there's so many to try. But just starting slow and basically just keeping things to low leverage for now. I've been I switched most of my bots to like 2 or 3x leverage, just to give them time to do their thing. Because the thing is with algo bots is, in choppy, rangy conditions, they're generally going to chop around as well. But what they catch those nice big moves, right? I was saying, and I think it was yesterday's stream or the one before, like, was it last Thursday when everyone got absolutely wrecked in the market where my short absolutely exploded there? That was the best day for these guys. And that day took more profits than all the days that took losses on these. So like it absolutely hammered that big volatile move like that. So obviously they are all their own strategies. They are all their own things. But yeah, you can basically go and play around. I feel like, to tell you which ones that I think are going to be good, I would need to be or which ones are going to be the best. I would basically have to be testing them for months at that point. So I'm just kind of playing around with them, testing them myself. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. And yeah, so far they have been overall a little bit profitable for me. So I like having that. I like having that passive income. So over time, I'm just kind of treating it like another position at this point. I am going to be DCAing into a bot, into some bot positions as well, just like I do with normal altcoins and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it so far. Like there's some people who only trade bots. I myself, I'm not ready to be totally replaced by bots. I love trading. I like looking at charts. I love pulling fibs. I look at like analyzing market structure and stuff, right? So I will still, my bigger accounts are the manual trading accounts, but I am still excited to get into the automation side of trading because why not? If I want to take a holiday or not look at charts for a while, at least I know if anything crazy happens, they're likely going to catch some nice moves. So why no STUBER Fibbot? Because I'm not ready to be replaced by the robots yet. I want to have value. Anyways, guys, I think that's about all I really wanted to go over today. So one last time, if you appreciate these live streams, please do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And as a reminder, for those of you who are interested in just seeing more examples of some of my favorite trade strategies, how I use fibs, market structure, give more of my thoughts on the market in general, as well as access to unlimited free algo bot trading through our exclusive partnership with Prime Automation. Plus the special promo from Blowfin for new signups for those of you guys who want to try it out. Do yourselves a favor, get in my Telegram by scanning the QR code or clicking the link in the description down below. And with that, I'm out. I don't think I'll be streaming the next couple of days here, but those of you guys in the Telegram, I will be keeping you up to date with how I'm looking at the markets, obviously. And yeah, with that, thank you so much for being here with me watching once again, my friends. Stay safe.